Welcome back as we await a verdict from the jury in the Roger Stone trial. Just another reminder of how corrupt our judicial system here is. I want to get an update about Marty Gottesfeld. We have his wife who is joining us now. And just to review real quickly what happened, we just had the report out of Orange County talking about the abuse by CPS kidnapping kids. The father who said, "You will submit to me or you will never see your children again." Well, it's not just CPS. There are cases of medical kidnapping happening across this country as well. And, of course, they also usually get CPS involved in that in addition to that. And in this particular case that involved Marty Gottesfeld, there was a young girl, then 15 years old, back in 2014, Justina Peltier. She had a severe medical condition. She was being treated by a specialist at Tufts, and because of a temporary situation, one weekend they had to take her to the hospital. They wound up taking her to Boston Children's Hospital, which is operated by Harvard University. So this is also not just a case of medical kidnapping, of child kidnapping, but it is also an example of corporate political power, how powerful giant corporations like Harvard can be, and how if they perceive you as an enemy, you can be treated as a political terrorist. And that's exactly what has happened to Marty. As she went to Boston Children's Hospital, her physical diagnosis was changed to a mental one by a person who was just happened to be doing a research project on exactly what she diagnosed Justina Peltier. She was wasting away as her parents were not allowed to take her out of the hospital. She was physically wasting away. Her condition was severely deteriorated. She was dying, quite frankly. She had been, even in spite of her physical issue, she had been active, had been an ice skater and so forth. And as people were trying to get attention to her case, bring attention to her case, their computer system was hacked at one point during a fundraiser. Very embarrassing for Boston Children's Hospital to be exposed as medically kidnapping a young girl, nearly killing her. But, of course, it was pointed out by a lot of different news media outlets. And Marty was accused of that and found guilty, and he has now been put in a very high-security prison where we put our political prisoners, or the people who criticize big politically connected corporations like Harvard, the Communications Management Unit. And so Dana has given us information about that in the past. We wanted to get an update about his situation. You can find their website to get up-to-date information about this, freemartyg.com, freemartyg, that's M-A-R-T-Y and the letter G.com. And Facebook is the same, freemartyg. You can also find her on Twitter at Dana Gottesfeld. That's Gottesfeld. Dana Gottesfeld. Thank you for joining us, Dana.
Hi, David. Nice to see you. How you doing?
Good to see you. How is Marty, and what can you tell us about the situation? I know he's constantly trying to push back against this and to do some of his own legal work there, but it's very difficult because they put him in this communications management unit that you gave us a great deal of information about in the past. It's kind of like, people think about it like kind of like Gitmo. That's where they put terrorists down there, but they also put high-profile political prisoners at our communication management unit to make sure they don't talk to people. Have you been able to get in touch with him much? Or?
No, I actually haven't heard from him in about 6.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Totally shut him off.
Yeah. He's filing legal work in his case against the former acting director of the Bureau of Prisons, Hugh Hurwitz, and officials at MCC New York for keeping him in solitary confinement for 91 days without any administrative detention hearings. So I'm following what's happening through that lawsuit. I don't know if you saw, but just recently at another prison in Indiana, an inmate had been kept in solitary for, I believe, years without any administrative detention hearings, and was awarded $100,000 for each year he was kept in there.
That's amazing. And to think about this, what they found him guilty of was hacking a computer during a fundraiser. It didn't have anything to do with endangering anybody because of hacking any equipment that was associated with the hospital. And to think that he is treated like some kind, actually worse than jihadi terrorists are treated. Solitary confinement for 91 days. How do you know, how is you getting you haven't talked to him in 6 months, but you have been getting written information from him? How do you know any of this?
Well, the lawsuit is publicly available. Court documents, you can follow it online. No, I haven't gotten any calls or emails or letters. What I've heard, what's come to my attention, is that there actually they're not putting him incommunicado, but they're threatening him, saying, try to write to her and see what happens, implying solitary confinement. This CMU is psychological warfare. It's psychological games. For example, there's no list of what you can and can't write for the most part, because they want to imply rules after. They
want you to self-censorship just by intimidation, right?
Yeah. So one of the big things that he has going on right now in the lawsuit is a temporary request for a temporary restraining order against the prison, protecting his right to publish. If you go into prison, you lose your First Amendment rights. Those should be upheld and protected. But the prison is able to censor what comes out. And as you know, Marty's a conservative journalist. He frequently writes. His stuff is picked up at InfoWars. We're very appreciative. Western Journal, our site, Free Marty G, a lot of Red State. And, censorship of conservative journalists is such a big deal, especially when it's critical of the government.
You got other places where they believe that they're going to get the prisoners to vote Democratic. They're going to let them vote in prison while they're still in prison, but they're not going to let Marty even write articles while he's in prison. And you have to basically go through and scan legal filings in order to try to put the pieces together as to what's happening. That's how you can figure out that he's been held in solitary confinement for a long time, because you can see that that's part of his complaint, I guess.
Yeah. And so one of the big things now, the CMU is such a uniquely interesting and terrible place. I think most people probably have never even heard of these kinds of places. There are only two prisons in the U.S. They're sometimes called black site prisons, where the Bureau of Prisons can change all the rules and play these types of games with people to prevent them from speaking and connecting with their family, from reaching out to legislators, all mail, including privileged confidential information with their lawyers, with the courts, with legislators, all get read and oftentimes blocked. This place is horrible. Marty was at a different jail. He was at MCC New York. But they've moved him to this communications management unit, and now we're not giving him supplies through commissary in order to file timely legal motions in an ongoing case. So what they can do is just move people around to prevent them from taking part in their legal work. This has been I know I always say this every time I come on, but it's been so illuminating to actually put systems to the test and realize anytime the American government is allowed to fester and work in the dark, they're always going to take advantage of the American people. We have to fight so hard for our rights because they're not given, they're defended.
That's right. And, when I look at all these people crying crocodile tears for a CIA whistleblower, and they absolutely have no concern for Julian Assange or for Marty Gottesfeld. I mean, Marty was a whistleblower. They put him in jail for that, and then when he was in jail, he was a whistleblower, so then they put him in a black site, a communication management unit. Did you know that the American government is doing that, Americans? So you wouldn't have known that except for Marty. Thank you so much, Dana. Again, freemartyg.com. You can find her on Twitter at Dana